everyone. Notes 4.1 are on the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. And it says look at the equations of the lines that are shown to you and write down some observations. So I'm going to just show you a couple of things really quickly on a program called Desmos. So if you see on the top DESMOS, that's the name of the app that I'm using. It's called Desmos. We'll be using this app sometimes in this unit, so you might find it helpful to download it. But I just want to show you a couple of things. So if I have an equation that says y equals 2x plus 3, for example, and if you take a look at what's going on here, if you notice, if I were to show you like a couple of points on here, so we have the point 0, 3, and then we also have the point 1, 5. And if you notice, if I were to draw the rise and the run-in, you'll see that this right here, it went up by 2 and it went over by 1, right? So if I were to do the rise over the run, if I were to divide this 2 by 1, I would end up getting a slope of 2, right? Also, if you notice, I could actually just put in a different point. Same thing when I draw in the rise and the run here. If you notice, the rise here is 4, the run is 2, so I'd do 4 over 2, and I would still get 2. And it's not a coincidence that in this equation here, the m, or the slope right here, or the rate of change that we have here is 2. So if you look at the graph, this graph tells us what the equation, or what the slope is going to be in the equation. Also, if you notice right here, there's this point right here on our graph is 0, 3. It is not a coincidence here that this point right here, the starting value, the initial amount, is also 3. So remember, it's always wherever x is 0, the y is always going to be this value that we have here. So like if I were to change this to a 9, for example, then you'll see here that this intersects the y-axis at 9. If I were to change this to a negative 4, for example, then you can see here that this intersects the y-axis at negative 4. Okay, and we would change this to just minus 4. If I were to, for example, change this slope right here to negative 3/5, if I wanted to do that right here, and let's change our y-intercept to positive 1. So if you notice right here, this starts at this intersects the y-axis at 1. That's why it's called a y-intercept. And if I want to go from one point to another point here, I can see that we have the point 5, negative 2. So if you notice right here, it is going down by 3. So to go from this point to this point here, I would be going down by 3 and to the right by 5, which is the slope that we have written out right here. So what are some important observations? Well, the first really important observation is that the b value is where the graph intersects the y-axis. So this is called a y-intercept. Okay, and just a reminder that the b value tells you your initial value. This is your starting amount. And then the other important key piece right here is that your rate of change in your equation is the rise over the run in the graph. Okay? So slope-intercept form is always going to be y equals mx plus b, which we should all be familiar with, where m stands for the slope, which is also known as a rate of change, and b stands for the y-intercept, which is also known as the initial value. So let's take a look at this example over here. So the first question we have, our equation says 3y equals 12x minus 21. It says graph the following lines on the set of axes below. So first thing I need to make sure that you are all aware of is that it has to be in the format y equals mx plus b. And if you notice, this y value here is isolated. So we always have to isolate the y, which is why we have talked about how to do this in previous units. So here I've got 3y equals 12x minus 21. The only thing that's on the same side of this y is the 3. So I don't like the 3. This is 3 times y. The opposite of multiplication is division. And I'm going to divide every single one of these terms by 3. So 3y divided by 3 leaves me with a y left over. And then 12x divided by 3 is 4x. And then negative 21 divided by 3 is a negative 7. Okay, so now just a reminder, if the general equation is y equals mx plus b and m stands for the slope, then here we know that our slope has to be 4. And don't forget, slope has to be written as a fraction, so we'll make this 4 over 1. And we also know that our y-intercept has to be negative 7. So how do I graph this out? I always start at the y-intercept and make sure it is on the y-axis. And then I'm just going to go up by whatever the number on top is, because that's the rise, and over to the right or to the left by however much the run is. So here, this means I'm going to go up by 4. Don't draw these squiggly lines right here. I'm just showing you how I'm getting to my next point. And then because the run is a positive one, I'm going to go to the right by 1, which means that my next point right here, again, I'm starting at negative 7, and then I'm going to go up by 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go over by 1, and that's where my point is going to be. So this is my next point. And then I'm going to do it again from here. I'm going to go up by 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over by 1, and this is my point right here. Go up by 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over by 1, and here's my point right here. Try to find a straight edge, and you would connect the dots right here, and this is your line. And then once you do that, you have to write the equation on the line. So you can either write the original equation, this 3y equals 12x minus 21, or you could write down the isolated equation, which is y equals 4x, minus 7. It's up to you, it doesn't matter. Okay, and that's how you do it. All right, so let's take a look at our next example. So in our next example, we have negative 2x minus 8y equals negative 24. I could get rid of the negative 2x and leave the negative 8y on this side. So I could add 2x. So I would end up getting negative 8y equals negative 24 plus 2x. Now, just a quick note, these are not like terms, so do not put them together. And then when I get to this point right here, I could divide everything through by negative 8. And I end up getting y equals, now negative 24 divided by negative 8 is a positive 3. And then 2x over negative 8 is going to be a negative value. And 2 over 8, so we'll make this negative 2 over 8, does not divide out evenly. Do not tell me this is 4, because if I have like 2 candy bars and I want to divide it between 8 people, that does not mean each person gets 4. It means each person is going to get 1/4 of a bar, but this is going to be a negative 1/4. So we say 3 minus 1 over 4x. Now, listen very carefully, because when I want to find the slope, the general equation is y equals mx plus b. And don't forget that the m is always the value that is in front of the x. So the m is going to be this value right here with the negative in front. So here our m is negative 1 over 4. And then our b value is always the value that is by itself, right? So our b value here is the constant. So here our b value will be 3. Now if I want to graph this out, again, pay really close attention to this next piece, because people are going to mess up here as well. So just a reminder, I always start at the y-intercept on the y-axis. And then my slope is telling me here that my rise is negative 1, which means I'm going to go down by 1, and that my run is positive 4, which means I'm going to go over to the right by 4. So this is where my new point would be. Now, if you notice, I don't have enough room to go down by 1 and over by 4 again. So I could go the opposite way. So I could go up by 1 and to the left by 4. But why am I allowed to do that? Well, when I get negative 1/4 as my answer, only one of these numbers is allowed to be negative. So either the number on top or the number on the bottom. Here we made the number on top negative, which is why we went down by 1. But if I make the numerator positive and the denominator negative, I'm still saying the exact same thing. It's still a negative 1/4 because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. But this time I would go up 1 and I would go to the left 4. Like this, and this is where my new point would be. And this is my line right here. Again, try to use a straight edge. If you don't have one, we'll have some in class that you can use, but try to use a straight edge if possible. And don't forget that you always have to label your equation. So this time I'm going to label the original one just so that you can see that you can do it either way. Either way is perfectly fine. And that's how you would do this. I know I said I would show you a different way to solve for y here, but I will talk to you about that in class. Okay? Don't forget to note down any questions that you might have. So that way I can answer them for you before you move on to the next thing that you have to do here. Okay, and that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in class. Bye.